G'day Bomber fans, a while back I got you guys to leave some positional changes you would like the club to make in the comments, and I read them all and I've chucked them in this video along with some I've added in myself as well. So today we're going to be looking at ways Essendon can change the team without changing personnel. We're going to be moving the magnets around, so let's get straight into it. Alright, starting with a really popular one, Nic Martin. He's already undergone a positional change, moving to the backline after being on the wing in 2022 and 2023. He was really good down back, he gave us creativity coming out of defence, his ball use is excellent, but I and many of you feel like he could be better use for us in a new role, either back on his wing where he started or up on a half-forward flank, which is where he was often used late to win games in 2024. Martin played most of the season in the backline, but still managed to kick 15 goals. He had some monster quarters up forward. He's such a high-impact player, but I feel like he could be better utilised playing wing and resting forward. He has such an incredible tank on him. He's a hard two-way runner, which we're lacking right now on the wing. We're also lacking ball use going inside 50, and Martin is one of the best kicks in the team. We can still throw him forward to win games like we did this season, but I just think that endurance would be better utilised on a wing where he can cover more ground, use the ball higher up the ground, and lend a hand down back if needed. The only issue is the fact that we have lost more defenders since Martin has moved down back. People love to see Kelly leave, but that departure has now made it more likely for Martin to stay down in defence. The depth in that area is very low. Hopefully we add to it through the draft and delisted free agency period, because I'd love to see Martin higher up the ground, using his foot skills for good going inside 50. Now, something I think we should see happen now that he's staying on our books for another year, and I think it was Dane Zorko's move to defence that kind of had me thinking about this, but Dylan Shiel is getting older. He's losing that burst of speed and power out of his legs. That happens with age. I feel like his worth in the midfield is decreasing each year. He's always been a very smart and dedicated footballer. He's a hard worker and someone you can trust to make good, educated decisions. That comes from the amount of experience he has, and he's also, from all accounts, a true professional and leader, and I think that kind of experience could be useful for the young crop of defenders we're growing. Shiel might not reach the levels of Dane Zorko, but they've had a pretty similar career trajectory, I guess, and it may be worth improving our defensive depth by adding a veteran to the ranks like we did with Dyson Heppel when he moved out of the midfield. He can be used as that wheel and go option on his left, that rebounding left foot kick that almost replaces Heppel and Kelly on that back pocket for an outlet. It would not only give us another steady head down back to replace the two we lost, and it would give our younger mids a chance to break into that engine room and stay there without jostling for spots with Shiel, who's decreasing in output in such a demanding role. But it could actually improve Shiel's output himself. He was struggling a bit at times in 2024 to break into that senior midfield. Maybe he'll be better off with less depth on a half-back flank. Speaking of young midfielders, Archie Perkins, I would love to just see us persist with him as a pure inside mid, even if it is just for a month next season. I just want to see us persist with Perkins in centre bounces more, and really it's round one last year that makes me think it's worth a test. His best game of the year, his career really, was in round one when he was in 87% of our centre bounces. He got 3 Brownlow votes, and then after that, just 2 weeks later, he was shunned from the guts when players returned from injury. Only 2 other times in the season was he even in half of the centre bounces for a game. He was so incredible against the Hawks in round one. I really want to see if just a month of Perkins as a pure midfielder, to see if it's worth persisting with because of that. But because his hip strength and power is really something we don't have much of in the guts. Not a full position change, just 1 month of Perkins as a pure midfielder. That's all I want to see. Speaking of pure midfielders, there was a comment or two I received talking about Andy McGrath as a midfielder again. It's probably not on the cards considering we're lacking defenders anyway, but I do get where people come from with this. I feel like when I think of McGrath's strengths as a pure footballer and not as a defender, it's his burst of speed and change of direction. He's incredible at always being on the move, receiving the ball and taking that extra quick step or two to separate himself from a would-be tackler. He has midfielder capabilities. He always has. It's why he played there for a few years. It just never really worked out. I personally, if we had more defenders in the team, wouldn't mind seeing him roll through a stoppage or two just to see if there is any leftover potential there. It's been a while since he last appeared in the guts, but then again, I think McGrath is also a really handy lockdown defender. He gets a lot of hate, but I really do like him on our list. So Will Setterfield has just earned a 1-year contract. He's probably going to need a new role because, I guess, there's not much room in that midfield, and at times early in 2023 he was actually rested as that 7th defender like Langford was as well, so maybe Will Setterfield could be a lockdown defender. He's not really fast enough to defend a moving footy when playing in the guts, but he's a big, strong body that can almost act as a lockdown on a medium-sized forward. He's great in a contest, but really lacks an open play, so if he's mainly used as that defensive defender, focus on his player and not much else, it would maybe help him not only to stay in position, but to be more aware of a moving footy and where he needs to be to best suit the team's strategy. structure. I personally don't rate him much as much as others, but if he stays, well, I guess he's staying on the list. When he stays on the list, I'd be happy to see him added to our backline somehow. Another defensive option, and this one came from the comments, there's obviously a growing trend in the AFL of key forwards being sent to the backline. Laverty is an example of that, Michael Hurley as well, James Stewart. We do it a bunch. Rory Lobb was a recent success story, but it happens heaps. Peter Wright is currently struggling for form. I personally think he can still be a best 23 player up forward, but if not, there are some who think a move down back could be an option. It's definitely a last resort kind of thing, something we'd only really do if he's struggling, but forwards do read the ball better when defending. It's why they're moved back so much if it's not working. I do think, though, his athletic capabilities are probably lacking for him to generate closing speed and I guess defend on ground level as well. I think he's better off up forward personally, but I would have said the same about Rory Lobb too. Alright, now one of the comments did say Alwyn Davey Jr. in the ruck. I personally think he might be a bit too tall, but I don't know if you guys remember early last year, I think maybe even before Nic Martin was moved there, but Davey was trialled as a defender for a few weeks in training, and now with Kako coming into the mix, his forward spot is under fire a bit more. He could maybe be trialled as that fast-paced rebounding defender again. We lack pace out of defence, we lack that smaller nippy backman. Davey is small, he's quick, he's creative, he's inexperienced, but it's his last year in his contract. He needs to do something to spark some life into his career. Maybe a move down back could create some life into our backline, whether it's in the AFL or VFL. Even if it's in the reserves, it could still give us more depth than we currently have. Okay, Nik Cox, let's be real, we just need to see him locked down to one position for a bit. Versatility is fantastic, but only if you're having a real impact with your different roles. Nik Cox is yet to really provide for our team aside from that debut season, at least consistently. But I think in 2024, he obviously played most of his footy on a wing or down back, but there were two games in particular where we were almost a bit surprised by Cox and his forward craft, and that was when he kicked 3 goals against the Suns and 3 goals against the Crows. He was a genuine third tall and a really dangerous marking option for smaller defenders, and it's the only position he hasn't properly been trialled in yet as a key forward, as that forward marking target. I think this is something that almost has to be created out of need, though. I doubt the club trials him up forward if we have Caddy, Jones, and Wright and Langford, but if injuries strike, I'd love to see Cox tested in the forward line to see if he looks the goods there. Many are ready to give up on him. I'm wavering. I'd love to be proven a little bit wrong here by the once dubbed unicorn. Jade Gresham, he was great up forward early in the year. He struggled in the second half of the year, but I guess the issue with Gresham is that he's someone we need the ball with. When he has the ball, he helps the team, but he often goes missing. The best way to include a struggling player who impacts the game but can't get a look in is to throw them where you need to find the pill, back in defence. Gresham is a really good user. He's a really creative user. He's impressively composed when he is confident, and although his goal sense would be missed, I think he can provide elements of that craft when exiting D50. He's the type of player to find a target that others can't, whether it's a cheeky little snap kick out of a pack or a hand pass into space. He does things that other players are often scared to do, for better or worse, but he is creative, and that creativity could be harnessed in a different role. That's if he's struggling, though, because that first half of the year was promising. Another halfback, common theme, but we do need depth there. Now, this one I personally don't agree with, but many experts float this one when talking about him. Elijah Tsatas down on the halfback line. I personally think he's a midfielder. He's a skinny, growing inside midfielder who hasn't really been able to break into a strong midfield. He's unfortunately not very versatile, so his work on the wing and up forward hasn't really been great, and it's because he's a pure mid. So I don't really get the want for him to play down back in an open position because his ball use doesn't really warrant that, although others seem to see something there, so maybe I'm wrong in misjudging Tsatas as a player, but I personally just don't see a role for him outside of the engine room. A few of you guys wanted to see what Mason Redman would look like higher up the ground. Red Dong on a wing. He's a good runner, one of the best in the team. He's a really penetrating player, not just with his run, but with his kick. He's not an elite user by foot, but he generates real power through those legs and can easily help get the ball out the back for our smaller forwards. I like him as a defender, and we probably can't afford to take any out of that back six, especially players like Redman, but I could easily see him on a wing or even in the guts. He would obviously have to hone in on his midfield craft, but he has the body and work rate for it. And finally, a position change that isn't really all that hard to read. Matt Guelfi is a lockdown defender. He started his career there. He was actually pretty handy as a defender. He moved up forward, which is where he's looked better. And I mean, if you look better somewhere, you should probably stay there. But let's say it's late in a game and a handful of defenders go down with injury. Matt Guelfi would be a handy replacement in defence. He knows the craft, having developed as a younger player in that role. So it's not out of the question, but I prefer him up forward. But that is that. Those were some position changes that I thought I would highlight for you guys. Some your ideas, some mine. Cheers for watching. Comment down below what you would like to see out of these. Make sure you like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.